I'm going to share my screen. But the lesson today is just a background of the modules and the solution at Signify Software, where we started many years ago. So I thought it would just be good to give a background on the solution, where we started, some of the design decisions that we made, explaining some of the anomalies that you might find in the solution, just so that it all makes sense. Okay, so let's start. So on the agenda, timeline and milestones. So we'll go through the timeline since 1999 up until present time, and also some of the milestones that were achieved technically on the way to where we are today, 2023. Some of the design decisions made along the way. We'll talk about Table 1 and Trainwreck, data-driven tables, audit, web forms, MVC, PRS employees, Vue.js, and microservices. Okay. If at any point you have a question, please stop me at any time during the presentation. Okay. Can everybody see this timeline that I'm sharing? Okay, I assume that is a yes. Just please speak up if the sound quality is not so good. If there's something I should repeat. So in 1999, Marinus started the development of the Employment Equity Planner, which was an HR system at that point. And believe it or not, Table 1 and Trainwreck were created in 1999. We'll speak about Table 1 and Trainwreck just a bit later. In 2000, Answer IT was established. And it launched V1 as an EXE. That was also Marinus's brainchild. And just a year later, for those of you who don't know, John and Marinus both studied electrical engineering at the Northwest University. So they were friends from university times and met again in 2000 and 2001. So John started Palmerium Solutions with Answer IT as his first client. So Marinus was John's first client. Okay, so from the Answer IT, the EXE, a classic ASP web application was created called Web Answer. So, and the name of the solution did exactly, the software did exactly what it said. So you answered questions on the web. So that's why it was called Web Answer. In 2004, can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, great. In 2004, Palmerium Solutions moved into its first office at Central Office Park in Turin. For those of you not familiar with that is just one street above us in Jean Avenue, where we are currently. And in 2005, Answer IT and Palmerium Solutions merged to become Signify Software. So Marinus, John, and a few other developers started, obviously first just working out of somebody's garage. It was out of John and Gavin's garage, where they were staying, also in Centurion. But in 2004, they moved into the Central Office Park, and the merge happened in 2005. So this is where the real development started, and also where the development was accelerated. The product suite that we have today was broadened a lot during this time. In 2006, the first version of the e-learning training scheduling, performance management, and phase modules were developed. And surprisingly enough, the first version was developed in VB.NET, and it was called Project 1. But Project 1 only lasted about a year. Then we created Project 2, and we switched over to C#. And that is in 2007, when the job profiling module was developed in C#. In 2008, we introduced Valid from and Valid to, and developed a second version of the training scheduling module, and it was called Event Management back then. In 2009, the second version of the e-learning module was developed, and SCORM was implemented for the first time. So fast forward to 2013. So just to confirm, 2009, the modules were developed using web forms and ASP.NET. In 2013, we started implementing MVC into the architecture. So the modules we developed from then forward was developed in MVC. Some of the first modules that were developed were the expert module, also the payment providers, and the learning store. There was a request during that time from a company which was a client for about 5 years. So it was Sage. So Sage Intelligence Academy, Sage having their own training, scheduling, their own e-learning software, opted to use our software instead of their own software. And we developed a learning store that they used. In 2014, Signify moved to Crossway Office Park. So it was about 1 kilometer from Central Office Park, on the corner of Jean and Lenshan Avenue, if I remember the streets correctly. In 2017, we started the removal of Valid from and Valid to. So we'll speak about Valid from and Valid to, also called data-driven tables, just a little bit later. In 2020, I haven't got it indicated here, but in 2020, we moved to West End Office Park. We also started with the development of microservices. So there was a decision made. So for a few years, we tried to use version 8 as our multi-tenant solution. But there were hindrances and rework needed to be done. So after contemplating that, it was decided to rather start fresh and start with microservices. So all the research started back then in 2020 in COVID. In 2022, our first client logged on to use microservices, and that was GVK, that used the performance management module on version 9, or the microservices solution, by single signing from version 8 to version 9. All right, and where we are currently in 2023, we're going to launch the version 9 MVP. All right, any questions? Okay. If there are any questions further on, don't hesitate to ask. So moving on to some of the design decisions that were made along the way. So table 1 and train wreck. I know Marina's always jokes and says we created table 1, and it was a sort of encryption back then, because from the word table 1 you could never deduce that it was the employees table. So it sort of encrypted the data, tongue in cheek. Okay, so table 1 and train wreck was created. It was two of the first tables that were created. So table 1 had employee data. There was no foreign keys. So table 1, the employee's title, Mr. or Mrs., and the nationality, everything was stored in free text in the table. It was the first table in the database. And there was a lack of experience also at this point in time. So the development team back then was basically Gavin Armitage. There was a developer by the name of Stanley, and then John and Marinas also the development. John did also did some of the development. Marinas did most of the marketing and demos. Okay, forward to the Trainwreck table. So as you can see, the naming convention was improved from table 1 dramatically to Trainwreck. Trainwreck stores linear records. The naming was better, but there was still no foreign keys. All right, so date-driven tables. So most of you have seen the date-driven tables. The audit and the data is stored in the same table. And this is just an example. This is the table PRS genders, which stores the master data per schema for all of the gender. So if you look at these records in schema 4, for instance, the object ID, which was the ID that the data was referenced by, in this case is, for instance, number 8. And it was updated on the 8th of May, and it was changed from female to female 4 as a test. So if you want to select a valid data on date-driven tables, you would say get date between valid from and valid to, which in this case will give you the female 4 record. So as you can see, the records follow each other. This one was the first one with the default date 1900. It was updated on the 8th of May. A new record was inserted. And this is the valid record now, as the valid to date is the high date that we use in the system, 4/9/12/31. Does it make sense? Let us switch to SQL here. So if I wanted to select just all the valid records that display in the dropdown for a specific schema, let's use schema ID 4. And 2. So this is the data that would appear in the dropdown. So the data is stored in the table, get that between valid from and valid to. The rest of the data we get that is not between valid from and valid to is the order data. Make sense, Harvey?
Yes, Tiens, I'm with you.
Okay. The next design decision that was changed or improved over time was order data. So the first audit tables had a TX audit prefix before the table name. So there was a table, there is a table Trainwreck, but there's also a table TX audit underscore Trainwreck. Let me move over to that. So let's just use this first record as an example. So the audit operation is INS, which means the record was inserted on a specific date. So TX audit date and TX audit operation shows the date and whether the operation was an insert, update, or a delete. All right, in this case, you would see Pico Trainer 1 was inserted on exactly 4 years ago for this specific record. And it was updated just after that, after the first insert. So UPI, the abbreviation means update insert. Okay, it was updated again after that, just a minute later. So the TX audit table has all of the columns that the original table has, but it has additional columns for the audit date and the audit operation. Okay, the TX audit date and TX audit operation. Does it make sense? Okay, great. So that is TX audit, which was the first type of audit table that we had. When we introduced entity framework and MVC, we added an audit table called audit logs. So what that is, and let me show you by example. So you have the entity data related to the table, in this case, ELS products, and you have the entity state. In this case, it was added, and all the fields, the values, and the column name is contained in entity field. So you have still one record per table record per audit. So just looking at this record, for instance, you have the ID, schema ID, created date, created user, edited date, edit user, and pathway object ID. As an example, so all the data is contained within entity fields for every column in ELS products. Okay, you have your entity ID, and that is the ID field inside ELS products. So if your entity ID, have your entity table name, ELS products, and that is the corresponding ID in the table as well. Okay, any questions on auto audit logs? Okay, so just to show where auto audit logs is used or implemented. So we override entity framework save changes. If you have a property synchronized session set, then auto audit logs are inserted for that specific table. Over here, you insert the audit log. All right, so if I remember correctly, I have to initialize SignifyHR data access layer DAL with synchronized session equals to true. And then audit will automatically be inserted for that table. Is it correct, Nardes?
Yes, that's correct, Jens.
All right, so that is auto audit logs. That was changed, or the approach was changed with sys audit. So with sys audit, we decided to add all the audit for all of the tables into a format that we can report on, as that is still and was a requirement to report on, let's say, for instance, updates of employee details over time. So enter sys audit. So sys audit is the audit strategy that we currently use in version 8. Let me just show an example here. So In TX audit and auto audit logs, the strategy was one record per record in the database. With sys audit, the strategy is different. There's one record per column per table. So take the first record that you see here. The table name is public holidays, and the ID, the table key field name is ID. In other words, that is the auto-incrementing identity field inside public holidays. The ID is 13. The field name is name. It's of type varchar. So this was a insert, as you can see in the action. And the new value is Heritage Day, which was the name of the public holiday. Update date and update user was the date and user who created this record, when and which user created this record. So I take that as an example. So let's use the public holidays, that first record, as an example. So to now go and see the audit for the specific record, ID number 13 of public holidays, we would take the table name. And table key field value is equal to 13 and order it by update date. All right, so you can see these records are all on the same date and time. Sorry, yeah, and it was updated directly after that. From Heritage Day to Heritage Day. Am I seeing this correctly? Heritage Day to Heritage Day. Okay, so the record was inserted, these three fields, on the 11th of February 2021, 9:26, updated immediately after that. And is fixed was updated from the old value of true to false. Schema ID was updated from null to 1. And was updated with an A script, which was probably a migration script. All right, so that is the full audit for this one record. All right, any questions on sys audit? Yes. Okay, Harvey.
Yes, just how is this audit implemented? Like you showed the previous audit table.
Yeah, so it's implemented by creating a trigger on the table. So it's implemented on the database level. So that is a good question. I will quickly show. Let's use this table as an example. Let's search for public holidays. Here's the table public holidays. So a trigger is created on the public holidays table. Let me edit this one just to show. You will see when you edit triggers on a database, because the operation is on the table level, it always takes a while just to open it up, especially the trigger Trigger public holidays audit. Let me do. Oh, okay.
Tiens, while it's loading, if I can just ask another question, is there any overlap between the audit tables at this stage?
Where audit is stored in more than one table.
Yes.
There are some tables, and I think PRS employees might be one of them, where we've created the audit first on all the audit logs, but later on also created the audit on sys audit. So in theory, there shouldn't be, but I know PRS employees is an example of a table, but it is minimal at this point.
Okay, so there's no overlap between the entity framework that logs the audits and this latest sys audit table.
No, they implemented at a different point. So what audit logs is implemented by overriding the save changes on entity framework in the solution, while sys audit is implemented exclusively on a database level as a trigger on the table. So they don't interact with each other. They run independently from each other.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Let me just do the following. Just bear with me for a moment. Now, it is sometimes better to open a definition of an object by using SP help text rather than to edit the object inside SQL Server. Okay, I'm just going to wait for SQL Server to open. So just to explain on the trigger, so the trigger calls a procedure, but the trigger has to be implemented on each table because that trigger has context of the table. So, but the trigger basically calls a stored procedure with parameters specific to the table that it is implemented on. Let me do the following. I'm going to use SP help text rather than trying to modify that trigger. Public holidays audit. And you'll see it will go much quicker. TR public holidays audit. And each of the triggers will look exactly the same. So the table name you can only get in the context of the trigger. So it gets a table name using the global variable proc ID. And then it selects the data into the inserted and deleted temp tables. Who knows what this inserted and deleted means in the context of the trigger? Who wants to venture a guess or give us the answer? All right, so inserted and deleted are logical tables inside SQL Server. So in the context of the trigger, inserted is the data before the change, deleted is the data or the state of the data after the change. All right, so in the context of an update, inserted is the state of the data before you, for instance, update the title from Mr. to Mr. Dot. Okay, and you only get those values in the context of this trigger. So we use temp tables for them so that we can access them in this stored procedure. So syshandle audit actually does all the hard lifting in terms of the audit, handling the audit, and storing the audit data. All right, does it make sense?
Yes, thanks, Jens.
Okay, so the trigger actually looks the same for all of the tables. The only thing that might differ is the column for the identity field. Can possibly be something else, but for most instances, this code looks exactly the same for each of the triggers. And yeah, unfortunately, you cannot call a stored procedure in a trigger. You have to define the trigger and get context for these three values: table name, inserted and deleted logical tables. All right, everybody happy with this audit? Okay, let's carry on then. Those were the examples that I've shown. So web forms, we started in 2006 with project 1, training, scheduling and e-learning, which was written in VB.NET. So, but all of you know that C# is the more preferred standard or language in the industry of web development. So VB.NET is still supported, but C# is more widely used. Who has ever written a program in VB.NET? Nobody. That's good. Okay. MVC, as I've said, we started, Signify started in 2013 with MVC. Ask the Expert Payment Portal and Learning Store were some of the first modules that were written in MVC. So with Ask the Expert, it was attempted to keep valid from and valid to. But yeah, that was something that we tried, but did not succeed. So the valid from and valid to decision was actually made based on Signify's developers had a lot of experience working on RAND water reporting in Oracle and SAP, and they use BEGDA and ENDA, which is the begin date and end date of record. So they use BEGDA and ENDA in the same way that Signify use valid from and valid to. And that works well, or worked well, in Oracle and SAP. And that is one of the reasons that decision was made for valid from and valid to, although we reverted later and started to take valid from and valid to out of the system. So PRS employees was created in 2014, 2015, and it was the return of foreign keys. So we realized valid from and valid to wasn't the best decision. So we had a table at that stage storing the employee information called PRS basic information. Some of you might have seen PRS basic information in some of the queries. So PRS basic information is just a view now. Let me get the definition here. But it selects from PRS employees, but it was a table at one point in time that stored employee information in a valid from and valid to format. So as you can see, we've added valid from and valid to just to be backwards compatible with reports that were already created. But the valid from and valid to is hard coded to the low and high date in the system. Okay, so PRS employees, only one record per employee. There was issues that emerge over time with regard to the uniqueness of the object ID column. So the object ID column was added in the date-driven tables, and the object ID was generated by conf framework select next object ID. Right, so basically we had a table containing tables in the system which stored the latest object ID. And from that table, we generate the next object ID for a new record in Pretorius basic information, for instance. A table NTF template, and its last record is 102,104. Okay, so that was the last object ID used. So to get the next object ID, this record would be selected, incremented by 1, and that would be your next object ID. All right, so the LMS portal. So Signify started to experiment with front-end frameworks as well. So in 2018, we redeveloped or developed the LMS portal in Vue.js. Who has done development on the LMS portal? Or who has worked on the Vue.js files? Okay, nobody on this call. So that was an experiment. So the LMS portal works quite well. The learning curve for Vue.js is quite steep. So we didn't develop any of the other modules in Vue.js as well. Okay, but shortly after that, we started with the development of the microservices in 2020, 2021. When the decision was made to redevelop our software in microservices. So Nardis, you can maybe just give a quick explanation of the approach being used, the triangle approach on version 8 modules at present.
All right, Jens. Yeah, so when we decided to migrate from the monolith, that's version 8, to microservices, we still wanted to have some of the critical features that's available on version 8 in version 9. So rather than redeveloping everything at once, we chose certain critical features and then brought that over to version 9 and created smaller microservices for that features. So basically as we bring code over from version 8 to version 9 in the newer .NET framework, we strangle it off from version 8. So as soon as it's been developed in version 9 in a microservice architecture, then we delete it in fact on version 8. So that's the strangle approach that we're using. Obviously, there's some new features and new goodies that's available in microservices, but yeah, that's beyond the point now. Cool.
Thanks, Nardis. Yeah, so thank you, everybody. That is the background from my side. Are there any questions from anybody? Easy and difficult questions are allowed.
I have a question, Tiens.
Yes, that is.
Regarding audit on version 8. Some tables we have in version 8 are associative tables or commonly known as link tables. How must their audit be handled? Because
Yeah.
they don't have their own identity column.
Yeah, that's a good question. And there are tables like that.
Yes.
Do you have a table offhand that you know which is used? Then I can show how it's implemented.
Okay, you open public holidays. In this example, there's a public holiday group holidays table. That's a associative table, I think.
Yeah, so they have a composite key actually. So let's quickly have a look at them. Have a look at that one. I know Job Profiler also has tables like that. It's public holiday. Sorry, what's the rest of the name, Nardis?
Public holiday group holidays. It's a lot of holidays in one table.
Yeah.
I think that's the name. Shucks. Something like that.
Yeah.
Been a
Let's
while.
just do the following. Public holiday, group holidays. I don't know if there's any data for it. What we can do. Let me just remember there is a table in Job Profiler that's used like that. It has to do with the unit standard.
Yes.
Let me see if I can just find an example. I know the key has a comma in it because it includes the composite key as the key field. Table key field value.
Yeah, the job profile at table that's like that is JP job profile unit underscore STDs.
Yes. Yeah, and that stands for unit standard.
Yes.
Yeah, so the key is then stored. Let's just do a select from this table just to demonstrate what the structure of this table is. So this is one of those tables that just contains a link between two other tables. So it basically caters for many-to-many relationships. That's correct, Nardis?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so we have many-to-many relationships between two tables, in this case between an additional resource package and additional resource content. So content is shared over packages, between packages. So if you don't create a new package just because one of the content inside the package changes so what the package is a package of files in this case under the additional resources on a pathway. So in that case, you store the key field value is the two fields comma separated. So in this case, you would only have obviously insert and delete ordered, so there won't be any updates because either you make the relationship or break the relationship between the tables. Does make sense?
Yes.
Okay, let me get that specific. I will hope I've gotten the name correctly now. Yeah, so this is the order definition. And sysaudit, syshandle audit has a parameter for associated tables. You'll see the third parameter is if it's an associated table. Okay. Any other questions? Harvey?
Yes, Tian, just regarding when we are upgrading modules to version 9 or rewriting them, how is the data tables handled? Like for instance, say we want to upgrade a client from a version 8 module to version 9 table, how is their data migrated?
So you can say Nardis.
So the answer is with great difficulty. But yeah, so it's basically it is a SQL action because the data doesn't map one-to-one between version 8 and version 9's DB designs. There is some kind of mapping that we need to do to carry data over from a SQL database that's in version 8 to version 9. In most cases, they start from scratch rather on version 9 because of the difficulty level.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so for a current client, Harvey, just to give an illustration of that, UKZN has been using performance management since 2009, and they want to move to the cloud solution. So in their case, we are keeping the application they currently have, the version 8 application they currently have, the version, so they can use that for reporting. But when they move over to version 9 performance management, they start on a clean slate. So some clients just want the data for reporting purposes. That would be the only reason. So for them being on-premise, that would be the easiest. And the reason is simple. Not all fields that existed on version 8 exist on version 9 and vice versa. So if you have to migrate all the data, there's a lot of complex decisions that you have to make on default values for new fields, for instance, or what do you do with existing fields that do not exist on version 9? Right. Any other questions or comments? Doc, do you have a question or comment?
I do not. Sorry.
Okay. Right. Any other questions? Rian Mornay, Robbie. Rian.
Sorry, I've got a bit of a bigger picture question. Are we switching everyone over to version 9 eventually? Are we getting rid of version 8? If so, when will that happen?
Yeah, so that will happen when all of the modules have been rewritten in version 9. So as Narda has explained, Rian, we're using this triangle approach. So currently, clients are logging into version 8 and single signing into version 9. So the approach that we are going to follow is the clients are going to sign into version 9 or going to use version 9 as the onboarding and for employee data. So that will happen very soon, and then they will single sign into version 8. And as we redevelop modules in version 9, the version 8 modules, we will just strangle them off in version 8. So there will be less and less functionality in version 8 that is used until all of the software has been redeveloped. So version 8 will still be with us for a while.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Harvey.
Yes, just in relation to that question, Tiens, when will all developers eventually move over to version 9 while only supporting version 8, or will there be a definite split between version 8 and version 9 developers?
So at present, we're keeping the version 8 development to a minimum. Only critical development that we need to do is being done on version 8. Maintenance, bug fixes, and development that we cannot do immediately on version 9 that clients require that use our version 8 modules. So that is the development. So eventually I foresee only maintenance and bug fixes being done on version 8, but all new development, especially the module development, is done on version 9. Obviously, if we build upon an existing module that hasn't been rewritten in version 9 yet, then we do it on version 8, but that is just when it's absolutely necessary and we haven't started redeveloping that module in version 9. For instance, the Signify change that we're doing now on version 8.
Yes.
Okay. Is there something that you want to say on that, Nardas?
No, you covered it, Tian. So basically, as you said, version 8 will become a service of version 9 very shortly after MVP. So just to clarify or expand on that a bit, so the long-term vision is that you basically only have version 9, but in the back end, some of the services will be version 8. So technically, all developers will be version 9 developers, but you will work on, depending on the feature that needs some work, will be either version 9 code, so in .NET 7 or in .NET Framework 4.8. So but it will be a unified solution after MVP. Yep.
Okay. Great stuff. Thank you, everybody. I think that's all we have time for today. On Thursday, we will cover the solution, the version 8 solution, and what each of the projects in the solution are used for, and what the thinking behind behind each of the projects. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Thank you,
Yes.
Tiens.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Tiens.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.